I think I'll start. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for coming, despite the allure of the ELTJ debate, which sounds kind of interesting, but anyway. We're here to talk about dictionaries. I'm Michael Rundle, I'm a lexicographer. The background to this is that Macmillan made an announcement back in November that they were no longer going to be producing printed dictionaries. Everything would be digital, online, apps, and so on. And even in the 6 months since we did that, things have moved on in the digital world. And just coming to this conference, I mean, most of the papers I've been to have been about mobile learning, blended learning, online learning, MOOCs, if you know what those are, massive open online courses, and all of that stuff. So, it's all happening. Obviously, there's still a lot of debate going on next door, and a lot of uncertainty about how that will pan out in terms of teaching and learning. But I think with reference resources, with dictionaries, there's less of a debate. It seems to me much more obvious that this is what's going to, the way things are going to go. Well, our book's finished. The first quote here comes from Stephen Krashen. It's actually quoted in the beginning of Michael Lewis's Lexical Approach book. But all of this is just a long time ago. It's the 20th century. When students travel, they don't carry grammar books, they carry dictionaries. I suspect they don't carry either these days. And then the Umberto Eco quote, which is really why my paper has that silly title. This is a much more recent quote. Now, he's talking about books, and obviously it's all quite unpredictable. We don't actually know whether books are finished or not. But I think it's important to stress that books, reference resources, are not like other books. It's a quote from my friend Hilary Nessie. The references for this are all on, any references will be on the handout that we've got, and also on the web. Dictionaries aren't like other books. They're not like academic books, they're not like novels, they're not like course books, which are being discussed at the moment. Because, I mean, for the reason Hilary says, that you look at them while you're in the middle of some other task. You don't. I mean, normal people don't sit down and read dictionaries from A to Z. Unfortunately, people in my business sometimes do that. But that isn't normal. It's something you use as a tool while you're doing something else. You may be reading, you may be writing an essay or whatever it may be. So you consult it and then you go back to what you're doing. So it's a very, very different category of item. This quote I really like. I found it last year on a Guardian website. It's not from the author of the article. It's a comment sent in by anybody, and that's very interesting too. Just the location of the comment and the fact that it appears like that, because that's the world we live in now. That you don't have to be Stephen Krashen or Umberto Eco to have your opinions published. Anyone can do it. You just send in a comment, and this person says 3 things no young person owns or uses and often don't realise exist: an alarm clock, an address book, and a dictionary. And she says, it is a she actually, I discovered, at university I didn't meet a single person who owned any of them. So this is someone who, this is already a year ago, this comment, and it's someone who had already been through university and didn't know anyone then who had a dictionary. So things are moving pretty quickly. And there's an even nice one is this, where I have a friend who works in Japan at the University of Hiroshima, and he was telling me that he'd brought a set of paper dictionaries into the class, and he said he heard one of his students, they were sort of flicking through them, and the student said, "Oh, this brings back memories," which is one of us. So it is a generation thing. I mean, I know obviously old people like me, we're quite used to paper dictionaries, but if you're an 18-year-old living in somewhere like Japan or Korea, which is very, very well connected, in terms of the internet, you are not going to, if you don't know what something means, you're absolutely not going to go to a bookshelf and take it down and look something up in a paper dictionary. Those days have gone. So that's really the sort of background to what I'm talking about. And there's just a couple of things I found on the web. This one says, 50 things we don't do anymore because of technological advancements. And the one at the bottom right there is, it says, number 25, look something up in a dictionary. Well, we hope people do still look things up in dictionaries, but they don't look them up in dictionaries that look like that. And then just another one, which my colleague Stephen gave me. 10 things we never thought we could live without, but can and do. And again, of the 10, number 8 was printed dictionaries. That says, when OUP announced that it would cease printing the venerable OED, headlines screamed the end of the English language. I remember that. There was lots of stuff in the press about, it was more or less the end of civilization as we know it. And then in 2012, that's nice, the publishing giant, Macmillan, said it would cease printing dictionaries. And then, of course, the Encyclopedia Britannica didn't publish. And of course, the reason it didn't publish its iconic multi-volume sets wasn't out of meanness or anything. It's just because it knew that nobody would buy them if it did. It's happened first with encyclopedias. I mean, in terms of reference, I think everybody knows that. But I'm sure, we all use Wikipedia, don't we, and Google and things like that. We don't pull down encyclopedias from the shelf. So let's look at the sort of why this isn't a bad thing. There are all sorts of objections, a lot of them rather nostalgic, I think, that came up. There was a lot of discussion online about this when we made our announcement, and some of the objections I think were trivial and nostalgic, but there are two that I wanted to address because I think they're more serious. One is this idea of browsing. People say, oh, you lose the pleasure of idly leafing through a dictionary and making unexpected discoveries. This idea of serendipity, that. And then the other one, which obviously I take a lot more seriously, and certainly is an issue, which is not everyone is connected to the internet yet. So we'll look at those two in turn. Browsability, I think I would sort of reject that one because it seems to me that browsability, the options for browsing when you're online are even greater than they ever would be in a paper book. Every word in your dictionary, in your definitions, in your example sentences, everything is clickable. You can click on that and go to somewhere else in the dictionary, find out what it means and so on. There's this sort of related words panel that we have in our dictionary, and quite a lot of the other ones do too, which I can show you in a moment. And very importantly, you can go from a dictionary to a thesaurus, so you can look up a word like shrewd or something and say, well, what other words mean something like that? You get, acute and astute and things like that. I mean, you can't do that in a paper dictionary. You just can't. You'd have to have two separate books to look at. So I think that online dictionaries offer more opportunities for either time wasting or browsing, depending on your point of view. And certainly, if you've ever used Wikipedia, you will know how true that is. And I think this is an exaggerated point anyway, because for most people, a dictionary is a practical tool that will resolve communicative issues they have while they're involved in some other task. And very few people actually spend happy hours browsing through dictionaries. They're not our main market, I would have to say. Just talking about that related word thing. So this is a dictionary entry from the Macmillan Dictionary for the word area, and then there's a whole sort of panel down here where you could say, well, there are other things like grey area, which means something quite different. It's not an area at all, and disaster area, no-go area, and then you can scroll down on that, and there's probably about 20 or 30 words, either words or phrases or compounds that have area in them at some point, and so you can browse around like that. The thesaurus, in the Macmillan Dictionary, every word, every meaning, every phrase has a link to a thesaurus that goes with it. So here we've got the word scouser, which I guess if you've been here for the last few days. You know what that means. It's somebody who comes from Liverpool. And then there's a sort of thesaurus entry, which is these nouns and adjectives that mean somebody or something from a particular town or city, and it's got things like Babylonian, Angelino from Los Angeles, Mumbai from Mumbai, and so on. And then you click on the More button, and then you actually get definitions for all of these things. So that's just something that you can't do in a paper dictionary, and it's a great feature. The connectivity thing is a more serious objection. I mean, clearly it is true that not everybody is online all of the time yet. It's a rapidly moving situation, a rapidly changing situation, I should say. This is a statistic from 2012. Over 75% of EU 27 means the EU plus places like Norway, Iceland, Turkey is also in that. So this is over 75% of households. That was in 2012. I'm betting that's probably 80% now. My daughter lives in Estonia, which is an incredibly well-connected country, and she said that she carries her iPad with her, and absolutely anywhere she goes, she can be online straight away, and she's sort of never offline, really. So that's pretty good. In parts of East Asia, certainly Korea, Japan, those figures would probably be higher. There's definitely is an issue about less affluent countries. And we talk about a digital divide. I think the digital divide is narrowing, actually. Africa's a very interesting case. In Africa, there has been a massive mobile phone revolution. Not as yet smartphones, but mobile phones. And it really is not an exaggeration to say that everyone in Africa has a mobile phone. I mean, it's maybe a slight exaggeration, but I would guess 95% of the population do. I mean, it's a huge, huge change. And then, so the move from there to smartphones, I mean, is happening. And I think, too, that you do need to compare like with like, because again, when we made this announcement, there were some people saying, "Oh, but what about all these poor people in Africa who won't be able to afford who won't be connected and therefore won't have access to your dictionaries?" And say, well, yeah, but there are also a lot of those people who would not have been able to afford to spend £25 or £30 for a paper dictionary and wouldn't have had access either. And so, to sort of imply that we have an obligation to make our dictionary freely available to everybody in the world, regardless of their, how affluent or how impoverished they are, is sort of not really comparing like with like. But I think that this is all changing very quickly, and it's a kind of interesting inversion of the normal rule with lexicography. The normal rule we always have is that things take much longer than you expect them to take. That's what Dr. Johnson found, it's what James Murray found with the OED, and it's what we all of them in dictionary. We're all used to the fact that things generally take a bit longer than you thought they would. In terms of technology changes, it's the exact opposite. Things are happening quicker than you ever expected them to. And I think that's really true, and I think that's reflected at this conference and at the some of the talks, or a lot of the talks that we see. The whole sort of mobile learning thing, which is a big theme at this conference. I got some statistics, it's unbelievable. I went to I don't know if there's anyone here who went to the Harrogate 2010 IATF one. Because I remember going there, and there was somebody there who had an iPad. There was one person who had an iPad, because they'd only just come out.
It's already broken, it's already dropped it.
Do you remember this? Yeah, everyone was sort of crowding around and saying, wow, look at this. I think iPad had only been out for about a month or something. So they were an early adopter, as we say.
She brought it in America. So there was
right, yeah. Oh, you remember Italy. Yeah. Well, that's 3 years ago. I mean, I went to talk this morning and everyone was just sort of taking photos of the thing with their iPad. It's just normal. We know that there are whole education systems that are in certain parts of the world that are moving stuff from books to tablets. So that's sales forecast for the tablet market. 350 million in a year, you know, it doesn't take many years like that to cover the whole population of the world. And smartphones, even more dramatic. I mean, 900 million smartphones is a sales forecast for this year. I was knocked over by that, I couldn't believe it. Macmillan has what we call a mobile optimized platform now for the website, which means that the dictionary software detects what kind of device you're on. So whether you're on an iPad mini, a smartphone, an Android phone, an iPhone, or whatever, and it kind of configures the shape of the thing so that it fits optimally with that. And so I say, well, why pay for expensive dictionary apps? I mean, you can buy dictionary apps for £25 or something, but they sort of they look like. I mean, that's screenshots that I did on my phone, and it all looks pretty good and works pretty well. And you have the word optimized there explained. So that's the whole move towards mobile computing. I think is a very major, very salient theme, and certainly one that's come up a lot at this conference. So that's talked about, you know, why we're doing this, why it's not a bad thing, and that most of the objections to it are things which are, the objections are either trivial or they are important, but of rapidly decreasing importance, I would say. And I want to say why it's a good thing, what the positives are. Well, that's a good one, isn't it? It's free. And the space thing that I mentioned before. I've got a whole stack of dictionaries at home because I've been in this business for a long time, and I was looking at one the other day, which was a 1974 edition of the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary, third edition, I think, and it's really small. It's less than 1,000 pages and quite a small format. But you look at, I mean, our last printed dictionary, and similarly with Cambridge, Oxford, and so on, they're very, very big beasts now, because we know a lot more because of corpus technology and so on. There's a lot more information we would like to put in a dictionary. And they do get to the point where, that thing with Stephen Krashen saying students carry dictionaries with them. Well, they're sort of carrying them and breaking their backs before long. They have reached saturation point. You can't make them much bigger. And then there's all these positives: audio pronunciation, sound effects, links to web content, video clips, and that sort of thing. And then, of course, the major issue of staying up to date. Typically, a printed dictionary gets printed, get a new edition every 4 or 5 years, and so you build up this big backlog of things that need to go in. And this business of new words, I mean, to a degree, there's a certain amount of what you might call froth, the kind of thing that journalists get very excited about. This new word, omnishambles, is in the dictionary, and so on. For most learners, that's not terribly important. I mean, what they're interested in is the core of the language, but the core of the language changes as well. I've got links on the handout to some very good posts on our blog about changes in meaning, changes in use of these, what you might call small words, grammar words, things like who and whom, around, ahead of, up to. There's some really interesting stuff going on there, and that will be reflected in the dictionary too before long. Meanings alter, which reflect social changes, technical changes, economic changes, and so on. We realised quite recently that we had to change the definition of the word dictionary in our dictionary, because you look it up on an online dictionary and look up the word dictionary, and it says a book which contains blah blah blah. So we had to change that. We had to change the one for marriage, which formerly just said between a man and a woman, and that's changing. And in our next update, this is one we've recently spotted, is the word meeting, because meeting formerly always meant that everyone got together in the same physical location. And it doesn't mean that anymore. We often have meetings where we're in 5 or 6 different places, and I'm sure that's become a common thing. So, those sort of things you need to keep up with as well. And then social networking, which I think is one of the big changes since, the last Macmillan printed dictionary edition was in 2007, and I don't think things like Facebook and Twitter barely existed then. And now they're just what everyone does, and particularly the younger people who are the primary users of our dictionaries and spend half their lives on Facebook and so on. That's generated a lot of new vocabulary. And there's a list of it, actually, on the back of your handout. There are, you know... yeah, stuff like, well, just a word like follow and follow up. A word like, you know, how many people have liked this? Be the first person to like this. It's a different meaning of the word like. So dictionary means something else now. It doesn't just mean that kind of great big fat book that keeps getting bigger. It's thesaurus. We've got language games. I mean, gamification is something, again, that someone was talking about this morning, and how important that is, that a lot of the, you know, younger people who are using our dictionaries, for them, games is something that they spend a lot of time on and understand, and so on. So we've now got a games page. There are 4 language games at the moment, and more to come. Buzzwords I will talk about in a moment, and the Open Dictionary, which is the crowdsourced one I mentioned, built by users, and we have a regular blog with, I think we've got a post from David Crystal up today. 4 or 5 new posts every week, and 114 authors I discovered so far. We've got 4 or 5 really regular authors, some of whom are even in this room. And they are a very good basis for discussion. My friend Sylviane Granger, who works in Louvain in Belgium, told me that she quite often uses the blogs as discussion points with her class, and you know, these things about changes in grammar and stuff like that. I mean, they're quite interesting, because you've got something that's quite short and digestible, 500, 600 words, and then you can get students to do things with that. The Buzzwords is and the author of the Buzzwords is sitting there, Kerry. Kerry does a weekly column on emerging trends in language. It's just had its 10th anniversary. It started in 2003, and it tracks a decade of language change. And one of the very first things that Kerry wrote about was Google as a verb. You know, it's still relatively new at that time. Wi-Fi, 2004. Now, and then more recently, 3D printing, and this very week there's an article on MOOCs. And Kerry's booklet is available on the stand, or also on there. Crowdsourcing, there's sort of various views about crowdsourcing. Jonathan Green doesn't like it. Do we believe this farrago of misinformation? And so on. I think that what he's talking about is something like the Urban Dictionary. I don't know if you know the Urban Dictionary, but it's pretty rubbish. I mean, it's interesting, it's entertaining, it's funny, but it's not where you go if you want to find out what something means. But conversely, there's a lot of good stuff going on Wiktionary, for example, where essentially you've got lots of people all around the world who know stuff about the technical words, the LSPs, and they are experts on it, and people are prepared to contribute stuff. When I took that screenshot to show, you know, off my phone, I didn't know how to do it. So obviously I didn't go to a kind of Samsung website. What does that say?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, that's fine. Okay. I didn't go to a sort of instruction book produced by the producer of the phone, Samsung. I just went online, and there's some random individual who's done a tutorial about how to do it.
YouTube will show you exactly how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and that's not coming from the manufacturer. It's coming from just individuals. There are all sorts of things going on, really interesting things. Tracking, you know, bird populations. A lot of stuff going on with astronomy. Interesting project about audiobooks for blind and partially sighted people, where you've just got volunteers doing stuff. So this is a big, I mean, not just to do with dictionaries, it's a big new area of the economy in a way. And Macmillan has an open dictionary which you can go to, which you can add. Please do add words. And it's good for what we call long tail vocabulary. I mean, we've got the kind of core basic vocabulary of English covered. This is about extra stuff. So, here's some examples. Slang, you know, the bank of mum of dad. ROF, I was rolling on the floor laughing, I think, isn't it? It's one of those things like LOL and so on. we've got lots of generations, Generation C, Generation Y, Generation R, to go with Generation X, which we already have. I think I'm doing a blog post about generations quite soon. So, and I think this is almost my last slide. What comes next? Well, we're moving forward. I think we are, as I said, having got good data for the core vocabulary of English, general, everyday language, that's all pretty well covered. We're interested in moving into LS-bit languages for special purposes. Better integration of our lexical resources. So at the moment we've got, for example, a collocations dictionary, phrasal verbs dictionary, the main dictionary, and so on. We want to bring all this stuff together so that there's a single search route for anybody who's looking something up. Adaptive content. This is this technology where the system sort of knows about you. It's not too sinister, but you know how Amazon tells you what kind of books to buy and records to buy because it knows so much about you. But I think in a more benign way, we're hoping that we'll at some point have adaptive technologies working for dictionaries as well. And we will be producing quite soon a range of value-added apps, by which I mean not just the dictionary, because you can get the dictionary free online anyway, but the dictionary with other Macmillan resources from other parts of the business. So going back to Umberto Eco, he says, once invented, it cannot be improved, but I think it can if it's a dictionary, because online is a good medium for dictionaries, and paper a much better one than paper. So thank you all very much for listening. And but if you've got any other, we might have time for questions now for a minute or two, but you can always email me. So thank you all for coming and for listening.